Perfect. I'm sorry, I'm giving you a long name. It's my parents' fault, and I'm giving you a long center name. I'm just going from bad to worse. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure for me to be here, and thank you, Brian, for looking me up. The HPC Advisory Council took a look at what we're doing at ICM. They found it was interesting to share at the event, so it gives me great pleasure to be here with you. There's also another caveat of why I'm particularly happy to be here, because it just so happens that I have recently joined the dark side. So the scientific community, you lot. I have spent my previous 8 years with IBM, first as an HPC systems architect, then sales, then the guy responsible for high-performance computing in Central and Eastern Europe. And then I finally decided to grow up and go to one of my premier clients and pitch in. And it's been a blast. I've only been there for a short time, but I'm here to tell you about some exciting things that are happening. So yeah, I feel really great now to be part of the same community as you guys, and what can I say? It's been a blast. Now, I have three stories to tell you, so the outline is going to be rather simple. And I really enjoyed Addison's presentation, and I still have not decided whether we are going to be best friends or whether we are going to have an interesting relationship indeed. I think the first thing is going to happen, and frankly, I was disappointed that he's not going to be on the boat, because I thought either we are going to have a drink-off or we are going to have a boxing match, precisely because his observations were spot on. Especially regarding this whole data science thing. So I do agree with him, but I think this is one of the greatest things that could happen to our scientific community. But again, I think we are talking about the same thing in the same way, so that's why I believe we are going to be best friends indeed. So, three stories then. One about what ICM is doing and has been doing in the field of computational sciences. The other one, which may be interesting, is our role in the open science and open data, open access developments. And finally, how these two stories are coming together in what is to become ICM's future, the way I see it anyway. And being part of the management board at ICM, I do have the idea that my vision does count, and I came to this organization because I believe that this is an interesting direction and that I have some value to bring in. So, first story then. Continue on the thought of long names. It's been a while since I've been able to fit 3 lines in the header of a slide. I do apologize, but anyway, this is something to be proud of indeed. The Interdisciplinary Centre for Mathematical and Computational Modeling has a long history indeed. We are meanwhile over 20 years old, and we have been established as an HPC center, or a center that has, as I'm sort of depicting here, using mathematical modeling and supercomputers to solve particular problems, okay? And this is a group of people, meanwhile, of nearly 200, with specialists coming from a variety of disciplines. I will not cover all of them today, so hence the busyness of the lower section of the slide. But I do want to highlight a few of key areas that are worth highlighting. Full stop. Okay. So one of the things that ICM is most known for, in Poland anyway, is our activity in the numerical weather prediction space. We have started doing that in the mid-90s, and we are running an operational weather forecast for Poland. Some of you may actually access it. We are getting, if memory does not cheat me, on the level of 80 million hits per year on the website that is showing the results of the numerical weather forecast. We are particularly popular with people who care about wind. So if you are doing windsurfing in the Polish Sea Bay, if you are doing sailing in the lovely Mazury district, chances are you've looked at our forecast. If you didn't, then this is a big hint. Please do, because we get very good feedback on that. We do have 3 models currently in operation. The results of 2 of them, of the unified model of the Met Office and of the COAMS model, which was in fact also co-developed by one of the people on staff at ICM, are publicly available in the form of a graphical forecast. We are also running WRF. We are currently doing verification tests between WRF and the other 2 models, and preparing for launching the results of WRF as well. And as mentioned, we do run a public weather forecast. The results of that forecast in a graphical form are available to the general public. By the way, the chart, and yes, it is a chart, on the right-hand side is probably the only chart I will show today, so bear with me. It shows you that rather than showing a nice picture of a sun and a cloud and some drops of rain, again, we prefer a graph approach, and this is very popular with the technical community, and people actually appreciate that this way of visualizing information makes sense. And in my defense, I will say that this is a forecast from Friday because Brian was very strict on the deadline for the slides, so I'm not showing you one for today because this is a snapshot from last Friday. But the activity in the numerical weather forecasting, or rather in the modeling of the natural environment at ICM, does not stop with the weather forecast. It actually starts with the weather forecast, okay? So the natural environment modeling group, led by Dr. Karolina Szafranek, is predominantly focused on developing higher level products based on the results of the numerical weather forecast, okay? So yes, we do run 3 weather models, but we are mostly interested in developing additional services, additional data products, if you will, based on the results of the numerical weather forecast. And some of the things worth mentioning, or some of the areas worth mentioning, are energy generation prediction for wind power plants, solar power plants. We are doing a forest fire risk information system for the Polish forest governance, if you will. We've been also working on a flash frost warning systems for Polish agriculture to inform, those people who are planting lovely apple trees that a flash frost is coming, so that they have enough time to react. We are also doing things in the logistics sector, in the air transportation sector, where we do turbulence forecasts, etc. Yeah. So while we do have collaborative relationships with those centers who are developing weather models, the stuff that we are really interested in is how you can take the results of the numerical weather forecast and build some additional services on top of that, or how you can treat that as an interesting source of data and link it in other areas, link it in other projects. Good. So the other thing that we do is we also do, boop. This thing in the top right was supposed to start moving. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Forget it. So another thing that we do is we do development of HPC software on our own, and what I'm showing you here is the work of Dr. Maciej Remiszewski in the field of computational physiology. This is a highly scalable model of cellular colonies, and the work that's been done was mostly around being able to, on one hand, move up the scale of the models to be able to simulate so many cells that this is relevant to doctors, okay, relevant for simulations supporting medicine, but at the same time without losing the detail of an individual cell, okay? Because as you probably are aware, usually the problem is you either have a model which is scaling well and does allow you to simulate lots of cells, but then you have the spherical cow problem, yeah? You've simplified the problem to the extent that the results are not really useful, or on the other hand, you do have detail on the level of an individual cell, but then the problem is that you cannot scale beyond 100 cells or so. We've proven scalability to 10 to the power of 9, so I guess billion cells. We are mostly limited by the size of the machine that we are running on, and so some additional scalability tests are going to follow. For those of you who are interested, I'm listing the website of the project. There are publications, benchmark results, and what have you listed on there. So this is, like I said, this is the result of work of a group at ICM who is working with people to accelerate their applications, sometimes to write new models of scratch, and this is just one showcase of the stuff that they have been doing. We also have a group which is working on visualization and visual analysis. Historically, actually, there is one thing I forgot to tell you earlier. We are a center which is surviving on external projects, okay? We are not getting money from the government to have fun, but rather, the vast majority of our budget is coming from projects that we bid for, projects that we are realizing, yeah? So historically, the visualization team has been doing most of their project in the field of medicine, because again, that's where calls have been announced, that's where we have been able to work together with doctors to bring value. And most of the work was in the field of, like I said, either manipulating medical images, doing some processing of that, through to computer-aided medicine and applying computer modeling, yeah? So most recently they are, for example, working with the with the knee surgery guys on figuring out how to use stem cells for ACL transplant operations to help them heal faster, etc. There has been work, significant work done in the foot surgery space, where we've taken a look at how the hallux is developing in women who wear high heels and what can be done to assess whether there is an operation in order, how this operation should be performed, how much bone should be removed so that after the bone grows back, the foot is in order, etc., etc. So on one hand, this was manipulating large amounts of medical imaging, 3D imaging, and on the other hand, this was about modeling how to find a metric that allows you to show how far from a healthy foot is a particular patient, so that doctors can draw a conclusion. Yeah. Other areas include cardiology, etc. And again, this is for me, medicine is a good example because my mother happens to be a doctor. Okay, and if we can jointly help an oil and gas company to save money, this is great. But if we can help doctors understand the disease better, I somehow find that this is more compelling, more rewarding. So this group also has developed their own visualization package. Meanwhile, VisNow is the name of the software. And again, for those of you who are interested, I encourage you to take a look at it. This has a modular design so that you can quickly put together a particular pipeline of image processing, image analysis, etc. For a particular task. And we have been able to apply that software and that framework in a variety of fields in medicine. So this is the visualization group. And finally, from the computer science side, we also have a group which is working on programming models, programming frameworks themselves. And here I wanted to highlight the work that Professor Bała is doing in the field of accelerating Java applications, okay? And before you laugh, this is something to be proud of, and I am. This is a framework that allows you to do efficient parallel programming using Java. Now, let me be very clear on one thing. The intention is not to convince everybody who has been writing wonderful C and Fortran codes in molecular dynamics or CFD to now move to Java. Even though we have proven that we can be on par with performance with MPI implementations, and I will come back to this in a second, but rather if you take a look at fields where there aren't efficient C or Fortran codes, and people do know how to program in Java, this is a very neat way to help them accelerate computations in Java. As you may know, Java 8 gives you, for example, a certain level of parallelism within a single JVM, but what this library does is allows you to employ multiple VMs working together, sitting across discrete nodes, and program them in an efficient way. Again, there are more benchmarks and more information on the website that I'm listing above, but let me tell you one thing. At the Supercomputing Show in New Orleans, we have been awarded the HPC Challenge Award for most elegant implementation of some of the HPC Challenge benchmarks in that framework, yeah? And when I said that we are on par with MPI, we have benchmarks that prove it, yeah? So even though the main idea is not to go after areas where there are efficient HPC implementations in C or Fortran, we wanted to show that this is not just a proof of concept kind of thing, but this is something that can work and can work efficiently. And so we have taken up the HPC challenge, if you will, and we have been given an award, which is always good, right? Also, there is a very important project that has recently started that is going to develop this library and framework further. This is being funded as part of the Hystera program. We are doing it together with 3 partners, together with the University of Bilkent in Ankara, the Queen University in Belfast, and with IBM Zurich. And the idea is to develop that library further. On one side, make it GPU aware, and I can only tell you that there is great interest from NVIDIA to pitch in here as well, and also to apply it in particular application areas, okay? So again, there are other developments in the software development, framework development at ICM that is going on. And as I mentioned, Professor Bała is leading that group. The PCJ, or Parallel Computing in Java library, is something that I wanted to showcase. And on the website listed on my slide, you can get further details, including the library itself, manuals, publications, benchmark results, etc. Yeah. So we do have HPC infrastructure at ICM, and we have been pursuing the strategy of, on one side, having capacity systems, on the other side, having capability systems. So the most recent snapshot is that we do have an x86 workhorse environment based on Haswell. It's roughly a third of a petaflop currently, and those are resources which are also shared within Poland inside of the PL Grid project. I'm sure you are familiar with it because this was a project discussed on the HPC Advisory Council in the previous years. We also have a larger node environment that is part of that environment based on AMD. But on the other side, there is a history at ICM of capability machines. We do have 2 generations of BlueGene on the floor, BlueGene P and BlueGene Q. We do have a Power 775 mainly used for the weather codes that we run, and we also have an accelerated system. Yeah, so the idea was to, on one hand, be able to cater to those people who have x86 applications, and within that PL Grid project, we are focusing right now on supporting specific groups of scientists. Okay, we have the bioinformatics, life sciences, individualized medicine kind of area, and the other one is material sciences. And on the other hand, we have those capability systems, and for example, those tissue modeling codes that I was talking about earlier, they have been developed to run efficiently on those kinds of machines. Yeah. So this is the end of the first story. If you will excuse me, I just need to clear my nose. Any questions at this time regarding the infrastructure that we have? Because this is usually a topic where I see questions. No. No questions? No? All right, yeah, I hope you're still with me, because the second story that I wanted to tell you is regarding the work that ICM is doing in the open science, open access area. This is also something that is not very new to us. This started more than a decade ago. And within ICM, there is a division which is called the Center for Open Science. And this was mentioned in some of the previous presentations. I'm sure you are aware of all of the EC directives that need to be put in place regarding open access to data, to results of science, to results of projects that are being funded by public money. This is something that we are not just observing, this is something where we are actively taking part. And I also wanted to highlight a couple of things that we are doing in that area, because we have gathered a lot of experience when it comes to handling large amounts of data, making them available to particular groups, etc. on one hand. And on the other hand, as I mentioned, we are not just observing what is happening in terms of the developments in open science, but we are playing an active part, both on the Polish scene and also on the European one. Yeah. So one of the more important things that we are running for Poland, for example, is we are making available all of the scientific publications coming from the major publishing houses. Yeah. So if any university, any scientific institute, public lab, or what have you, wants to access publications which are coming from Elsevier, Springer, or what have you, they are accessing it through us. And we are operating a service which is called the Virtual Library of Sciences. Yeah, there have been many projects connected to that activity, like, for example, work on analyzing Polish publications, how they are being published, what kind of research is going on in Poland, how that relates to research being done elsewhere as well. But this is, as I mentioned, an operational service that we run for the Polish scientific community. Did anybody hear about the OpenAIR project? Is anybody involved, perhaps, in the OpenAIR project? Okay. Well, somewhat surprising to me, but this is one of the OpenAIR is one of the most important infrastructures for sharing scientific data within Europe. Yeah, so this is supporting the EC's policies and directives. This has been funded as a series of FP7 and now Horizon 2020 projects, but the idea is this is going to become its own legal entity. The sustainability plan has been prepared, and that is going to be put in practice within the next year. What we are doing there is essentially two things. One is we are doing the analysis of scientific content, if you will. The idea is that we are not just providing a database of publications, but we can do analysis on top of that. This is the very common problem. You take a particular area of cancer research of a particular type. How do you find out what the scientific community knows about it? How do you make the connections between who has been doing research in that field? How do you know what the state of knowledge is currently? Yeah? So those kind of mechanisms are being developed and implemented at ICM with the goal of creating a common map of academia. Like I mentioned, to understand not just what publications have been written, but who the key players are, how the projects are unfolding, how they are interconnected together. And the other important role that ICM is playing is we are actually hosting these servers at ICM in Warsaw. Yeah? So we are on one side developing the algorithms mostly based on Hadoop to do the analysis, but we are actually hosting the service at ICM. And thus we are an important member of that project. Yeah? Now, another project that I hope you maybe heard about, EUDML. Nobody? Anybody? Any mathematicians here? Thank you, Torsten. Save me as always, yeah? So EUDML was a similar kind of idea around mathematics. And again, ICM has been the technology lead on this project. There were 12 partners, and the results you can see if you go to www.eudml. And again, this is a project where we have been able to not just bring in value, but also develop skills that we are now finding useful. Yeah. So the second story that I'm telling you should resonate in a way that on one side we are playing an active role in the open science field, but at the same time we have been able over the last decade to collect lots of information regarding storing large amounts of data, processing large amounts of data, making them available, studying its content, etc., etc. Yeah. In fact, the last thing that I wanted to say on that story is that we are also organizing conferences, public talks, working with the government on proposing how the law should take all of those directives into account. And in May there is going to be a conference to which I would like to cordially invite those of you for whom this is relevant. If you have colleagues at your organizations which are working in that particular field, we had a great discussion in with EPFL over coffee earlier this morning, that this is also a topic interesting for them, so I hope this is also true for the other centers. We kindly invite you, registrations are open, the speakers are coming from interesting places, and so consider this to be my invitation to join. So those are the two, let's say, legs that we have historically. One of them, which is 21 years long, if you will, which is coming out from the computational science field. The other one is more in the data management, data analysis kind of field. And here we come to the third story, which is about data sciences, the revolution of changing paradigms in science, etc. Yeah, which is something that I perceive as the most interesting direction going forward. It all, as you may remember, started with noticing that just like we have over the years been adding additional paradigms to the way that we do science. Yeah, we've started thousands of years ago, if you will, with observing what is going on. Then hundreds of years ago, we started to make generalizations, came up with theories. The Newtons of the world, the Keplers of the world started to make some connections, and they started to have theories. And there was a lovely symbiosis of theory and experiment. Then computer simulations came along in mid of the last century, and this really became, in my mind, I hope you agree, a third pillar of science with interactions going all ways, right? Because sometimes we use a computer simulation because an experiment would be too expensive or impossible. Sometimes we do it because the theory doesn't hold, and so this let's say triangle has been going on for quite some time. But more recently, as I'm sure you will agree, we have found that there is a new revolution around the corner, and within the last years we have seen that a lot of stuff can be drawn from data. Yeah, and the way that I like to look at it is that the world has become our experiment. The world has become our simulation, and if we can draw good conclusions from the data that is being generated that is available, whether we like it or not, then some interesting things can start to happen, yeah? There are some consequences, and again, Edison mentioned that a couple of times, yeah? Some new skills are required. The industry has gaps. There are people who would like to ask questions against newly available data sets, but there are few people who know how to actually answer that question, yeah? And I don't think this is a bad situation. I think this is a perfect situation for our community, yeah? Because something that we can do very well is to get our heads around problems, yeah? So when I mentioned that for ICM, this area of whatever you want to call it, data intensive research, data sciences is important going forward. I genuinely mean that. Yeah, this is a strategic direction for us, and we are currently undergoing a big project, which is a significant step in that direction. Yeah, so this is the establishment of a center of competence in that field, and I will talk about the teams that we have in that center of competence in a second. We are also building a new facility. Yes, there is going to be a lot of exciting infrastructure there as well, although we have currently started the technical dialogue around the technology, so there is not a lot that I am allowed to tell you, other than saying to the vendors that they have until Friday to sign up. So there is another invitation. But this is a first step, a very important step for us in that direction, and I, being part of the management board, see that as the big thing for ICM going forward. Yeah. So just like we have teams that are working on the computational science field, we also have teams that are tackling this data intensive research stuff. The first team I wanted to mention is the team led by Dr. Łukasz Bolikowski, our Applied Data Analysis Lab. Those are the guys who have been responsible within those Center of Open Science for building those repositories, building the analytics behind OpenAIR, etc. And they have been busy developing their skills of text and data mining and finding ways of applying that to solving particular problems, okay? And the two projects I wanted to highlight is, one of them is a project that we are now doing for the Polish government, which is the analysis of judicial decisions, yeah? We've got north of 200 different courts, which are all using their own systems for digitizing the verdicts. Nobody's analyzing it, nobody's putting it together. It's a big challenge. Out of the many V's that I'm sure you know big data has, variety is a big one here, because even stuff as simple as writing the date is becoming relevant here because people just do it differently. And while there have been within the different classes of courts systems that were trying to connect different courts of the same type together, there was no system linking everything, yeah? And if you think about it, this is an interesting one indeed, because what is law? It's not the stuff written in the books, it's not the stuff written in the bills. How the law is interpreted, how judges are making decisions, that is equally important, yeah? And finally, we will have a possibility to look into that, yeah? And the other one I love, because just like I told you before about the spherical cow problem, yes, we are working with cows in a very professional manner as well, and the goal is obviously a joke. I could not resist being in Switzerland to mention chocolate. The goals are obviously just as exciting, but somewhat more down to earth. I love this project, okay, because the Polish, I don't know how to translate their name correctly, Association of Bovine Herders, etc. They have been collecting data since 1994, okay, with the hope that there will come a time where people will be able to draw conclusions from that data, okay? They've got 100 million records of particular type of cow from a particular herd, gave on a particular day a particular amount of milk with a particular composition. And they would like to draw some conclusions, yeah? And luckily, we live in exciting times, and luckily now we can do that, yeah? And we've been delivering a few weeks ago yet another report to them, and they are excited because it wasn't for nothing, yeah? So I like this project a lot because, again, it shows you that stuff that was not possible a few years ago is possible now, and it shows you that collecting data is indeed worthwhile, yeah? So I do hope that Poland is going to be able to make even better chocolate to compete with the Swiss, and I like to think that we as ICM have a contribution, okay? When I was telling you about approaching not those people who know how to use HPC, algorithms, etc., but rather those who don't yet, this is a great group to mention, okay? Because again, if we take a look at material sciences, molecular dynamics, people know how to use large machines, big algorithms, etc. Yeah? If you take a look at the human sciences or social sciences, this is not always the case. Yeah? And I'm proud to have a group led by Dr. Dominik Batorski, who is specializing in computational social sciences. Yeah? So this is not just analyzing the Facebooks, Twitters, or what have you, but trying to understand how the connection between people can be used to get better insight, yeah? And we are talking, yeah? We are talking to GSM operators, banks, what have you, to try to understand what they can figure out about the data that they have about their clients to understand them better, yeah? And I'm delighted to say that this is more often than not a discussion not about how do I trick the customer into spending more money, but how can I do something so that the client has some value from the analytics that we do on top of our data, yeah? In other words, if I'm a bank, I would like a client to come to my bank because they are analyzing what I do and maybe they can give me some hints. I could spend less if I change the petrol station or whatever, yeah? So as I mentioned, we do have a group working on that, and those are very exciting conversations indeed, because coming back to the Intersect 360 talk, I do see a problem that people are coming to me and they say, look, I've got all of this data. They will not admit to say, and I have no clue what to do with it, yeah? But what else could I get out of it, yeah? So I do think there are data sources already there sitting in customers' data centers or being publicly available online, hence this whole open science and open access movement I was mentioning earlier. But now we jointly as a community need to figure out how this data can be put to work, yeah? And I think it's exciting, as I'm sure you can see. Right, now another group that I will mention is led by Dr. Przemek Biecek, and this is the group which is doing applied statistics, if there is such a thing as applied. Well, they are the guys who are crunching, using statistical modeling to tackle big and complex data. Again, this is a group which is currently doing most of their work in personalized medicine, genomic sequencing. But the interesting thing that I will mention is that doing the sequencing meanwhile is easy, okay? I told you that within this GRID project we do have infrastructure that can do that. But we've been able to attract some interesting guys, most recently the Greater Poland Cancer Research Center, because we know what to do after the sequencing is complete, okay? So this is the interesting stuff now, to try to look into different molecular types of cancer, yeah? Because it turns out that for a particular cancer of a particular organ, there are multiple molecular types, different types that are caused by a different kind of mutation, okay? And this means that even though this is cancer of the breast, of which already 4 different molecular subtypes have been identified, different treatments will work while others won't, yeah? And then the story gets even more interesting because it turns out that maybe we do know a treatment for a particular molecular subtype of cancer of organ A, and it can be applied to a different subtype of molecular subtype of cancer of organ B because they are related due to the nature of their mutation. Yeah. So this is interesting stuff. And then something which gets me excited is that similar kind of algorithms, similar kind of methods can then be applied to analyzing data coming from call centers. Yeah. So this is truly interdisciplinary stuff. Yeah. I loved this analogy about the Airbus 360 reading grass over Ireland, yeah? And this is a really nice analogy, yeah? But we see, and we have interdisciplinarity as the first part of our very long name, yeah? I love when we can apply methods which we developed in one area to another area, and that has indeed been taking place. So, just drawing this picture to a conclusion, I do think that we're onto something. We as a community with this data science thing. I don't think this is just a buzzword. This is something that is going to go away. And I agree that this is not very different from what we all have been doing in the past. Okay, yes, we need different algorithms, different programming frameworks, etc. But we have a problem for which we need to apply new kinds of thinking, new kinds of computing to solve it in time. I mean, we know, you guys know how to do that, okay? As part of our activity in Poland, we are, for example, organizing a data science meetup, yeah, where we are inviting people to come listen to what other people are doing. We've already started a couple of months ago. We are up to 418 participants. And the interesting part is who the people are who are coming. Because it's not mostly students, yeah? It's now mostly people from companies, from IT departments of companies, because they are starting to figure out that there is really something that can come out of that, yeah? And again, I don't know what you guys are doing in that field. I encourage you to start, because it's very exciting indeed. We are very open for collaboration. In fact, what I'm responsible for at ICM is collaborating, be it with industry, be it with other scientific centers. What I have found in my short time at ICM is that the industry is very interested, yeah? Because on one side, if you think about it, they've got all of the reasons, they've got all of the data, they've got all of the questions that they would like to ask, but they don't know how. Well, they know how to ask the question, but they're finding it difficult to find an answer. On the other hand, we as ICM, we as community, we have many years of experience in similar kind of things, yeah? Yes, we need to develop new skills. Yes, we need to adapt to the more modern reality, but what we are doing can be made very relevant, okay? And so I find that we live in perfect times, and this data science thing is a very interesting area in which to develop onward. We are doing it at ICM. This is our big bet for the future. Hopefully some of you are excited equally as I am. So the last slide is an invitation, yeah? Do come to the dark side, because it's a lot of fun, and I think a lot of good stuff is going to happen there, and then we have cookies. Yeah? That's it. Thank you very much.